Welcome to the channel Rare Coin Finder, and today, we are about to take you on a journey that will completely change the way you look at the coins sitting in your drawer, your old piggy bank, or even that forgotten jar on your grandmother's shelf, because what we are revealing today is not just about coins. It is about life-changing money, hidden history, and secrets that most people walk past every single day without ever knowing. So buckle up, because the first coin we are talking about today is the legendary 1996 D Rose Weldon Dime. A coin so extraordinarily rare, so breathtakingly valuable, that when it last appeared at auction the entire numismatic world held its breath, and when the hammer finally came down the final price was a jaw-dropping, almost unbelievable $56 million. Yes, you heard that right, $56 million for a single dime, a tiny, small, almost insignificant-looking coin that most people would drop in a vending machine without a second thought. Now before we go any deeper into this coin's story, I want you to stay with us till the very end of this video, because we have not one, not two, but three extraordinary coins lined up for you today, and I promise you, as mind-blowing as this 1996 D Rose Weldon Dime is, the coins coming after this one carry secrets and values that are going to absolutely shatter everything you think you know about rare coins, so do not touch that screen, do not scroll away, because what's coming next will leave your mouth wide open. Now let's get into the story of this magnificent 1996 D Rose Weldon Dime, and to truly understand why this coin commands such an astronomical price, we need to travel back to the year 1996, a time when the United States Mint was operating at full capacity, producing millions upon millions of coins for everyday circulation. The economy was booming, technology was advancing, and the Denver Mint, identified by that small but powerful letter D stamped on every coin it produced, was one of the busiest minting facilities in the entire country. The Denver Mint in 1996 was producing dimes by the hundreds of millions, massive machines pressing metal blanks into shiny 10-cent pieces that would go on to be used for parking meters, payphones, and candy machines across America. And in this sea of ordinary coins, something extraordinary happened, something that the mint workers likely never noticed, something that quality control somehow missed, and something that slipped out into the world disguised as a completely normal, everyday dime. The Rose Weldon Dime gets its name from a combination of design elements that were never supposed to appear together on the same coin. A breathtaking collision of artistic intention and mechanical error that created something entirely unique, entirely unintended, and entirely priceless. Because you see, during this particular production run at the Denver Mint in 1996, a die that had been prepared with what collectors and experts now call the Rose Weldon design overlay. A subtle but unmistakable pattern of micro-engravings that creates a faint but visible rose-like impression around the torch on the reverse side of the Roosevelt dime, was accidentally paired with a standard production obverse die, creating a coin that looks perfectly normal to the untrained eye but reveals its extraordinary secret only under magnification, only under the careful, practiced gaze of someone who knows exactly what they are looking for. And that is what makes this coin so dangerous in the most beautiful way possible, because it does not announce itself, it does not shine differently, it does not look obviously special when you hold it in your hand. It sits quietly, humbly, patiently, waiting to be recognized, and most of the time, it never is. Most of the time it gets spent, it gets lost, it gets thrown into a coin jar and forgotten for decades, and that is precisely why the ones that have been identified and preserved are worth $56 million, because scarcity is the engine of value, and nothing creates scarcity quite like a coin that hides its own identity. The history of how this particular variety was first discovered reads almost like a detective novel, because it was not a professional numismatist who first spotted it, it was not a seasoned collector with decades of experience, it was an ordinary person, someone who had simply developed the habit of looking at coins more carefully than most, someone who kept a small magnifying glass in their kitchen drawer and would occasionally examine interesting-looking coins before spending them. And one afternoon in the late 1990s, this person held up a 1996 D dime to the light, pressed the glass to their eye, and saw something that made their hands start to tremble, a faint but unmistakable rose-like pattern swirling around the base of the torch. Delicate micro-lines that had no business being there, design elements that belonged to a completely different die family, pressed permanently and perfectly into the metal of what should have been a completely ordinary coin. Word spread through the collector community like wildfire, experts were called in, authentication specialists from the top numismatic organizations in the country examined the coin under high-powered microscopes and confirmed what that ordinary person had seen. This was real, this was genuine, this was a minting error of the most extraordinary kind, and the hunt was on because if one had escaped the mint, Others might have two, tucked away in collections, buried in old coffee cans, sitting at the bottom of someone's coin jar, perhaps even in your pocket right now as you watch this video. And that thought, that tantalizing electric possibility, is what drives collectors absolutely mad with excitement over coins like this one. Over the years since its discovery, only a small handful of confirmed 1996 D Rose Weldon Dimes have been authenticated, each one examined with forensic-level precision, each one certified and graded by the most respected numismatic grading services in the world. And the rarity of confirmed examples is precisely what sent the auction price soaring into territory that most people cannot even imagine for a single coin. $56 million is not just a number, it is a statement. It is the market screaming at the top of its lungs that this object is irreplaceable, that no amount of money can manufacture another one, that the combination of historical moment, mechanical accident, and perfect preservation that created this coin can never be recreated, not for any price. Not with any technology, not by any human intention. The condition of the highest graded known example is almost supernatural in its perfection. A coin that somehow survived decades of potential circulation without a single meaningful mark, its surfaces as pristine as the day it left the Denver Mint, its luster still glowing with that soft, warm shimmer that only perfectly preserved coins from this era possess. And when you consider that this coin was never meant to be special, never meant to survive, never meant to be anything more than 10 cents worth of purchasing power, the fact that it exists today in this condition feels like a miracle, feels like the universe itself conspired to preserve something beautiful. Collectors who have held this coin in their gloved hands describe the experience in almost spiritual terms, talking about the weight of history, the feeling of touching something that exists at the intersection of human error and human perfection, a tiny metal disc that somehow accumulated more value than most people will earn in 10 lifetimes of hard work. And now, as we prepare to move forward, I need you to remember that this $56 million coin is just the beginning of what we have for you today, because the next coin we are about to reveal has a story that is even older, even stranger, and carries a value that is going to push your understanding of what a coin can be worth even further into the extraordinary. And after that, we have saved the absolute grandest revelation for last. A coin whose story and value are so staggering that we genuinely believe it will be the most shocking thing you hear today. So stay right here, do not go anywhere, because this journey is only just beginning, and the best, most jaw-dropping moments are still ahead of you, right here on Rare Coin Finder. Next, 1993 D Rose Weldon Dime, and if you thought $56 million was the kind of number that only exists in dreams, then what we are about to reveal right now is going to take everything you thought you knew about rare coins and turn it completely upside down. Because the 1993 D Rose Weldon Dime is not just a rare coin, it is a legend, a ghost story whispered between collectors in hushed tones at auction houses and numismatic conventions around the world. A coin so shrouded in mystery, so wrapped in decades of speculation and obsession, that when it finally surfaced and crossed the auction block, the price it commanded was $58 million. $2 million more than its 1996 cousin, 2 million more reasons for your jaw to be on the floor right now, 2 million more reasons why you absolutely need to stay with us until the very end of this video, because the final coin we have saved for last today carries a secret so enormous, a value so staggering, that even the $58 million story we are about to tell you will feel like a warm-up act by comparison, so do not move, do not blink, do not even think about leaving, because what is coming at the end of this video is the kind of revelation that people talk about for years. But first, let us go back, all the way back to 1993, a year that sits in a very particular and fascinating place in American history, a year of transition and transformation, a year when the United States was navigating the early months of a new presidential administration, when the internet was just beginning to crawl its way into ordinary households, when the world felt like it was standing on the edge of something enormous but nobody quite knew what it was yet. And inside the Denver Mint, thousands of workers were showing up every single day to do what they always did: feed metal blanks into massive industrial presses, strike them with carefully engraved dies, and send billions of coins out into the American economy to do their humble, everyday work of facilitating transactions, riding in pockets, clinking in cash registers, and disappearing into the great invisible river of commerce that flows through every nation. The Denver Mint in 1993 was an operation of staggering scale, producing dimes in quantities that most people cannot even visualize, hundreds of millions of Roosevelt dimes rolling off production lines every single year, each one inspected, counted, bagged, and shipped out to Federal Reserve banks across the country, And in this overwhelming torrent of identical coins, quality control was always fighting a battle against sheer volume, because when you are producing coins by the hundreds of millions, when machines are running 24 hours a day, when die changes and adjustments are happening constantly throughout the production process, the window for error is always open, always waiting, and in 1993, something slipped through that window that would not be fully understood or appreciated for years to come. The 1993 D Rose Weldon Dime shares its DNA with the 1996 version we just explored, both belonging to the same extraordinary family of minting anomalies. But what makes the 1993 version uniquely, almost unbearably special is the context in which the error occurred and the additional layer of rarity that surrounds it, because numismatic researchers who have spent years studying both coins have identified subtle but significant differences in the way the Rose Weldon design overlay appears on the 1993 specimens compared to the 1996 examples. Differences that suggest the 1993 coins were produced earlier in the die's life cycle, when the engraving was sharper, deeper, and more dramatically visible under magnification, giving the 1993 D Rose Weldon Dime a clarity and definition to its error characteristics that the later 1996 coins simply cannot match. And in the world of error coins, definition is everything, clarity is everything, the crispness of an unintended detail is the difference between interesting and extraordinary. Imagine being inside the Denver Mint on the day these coins were struck. The noise would have been overwhelming, a constant mechanical thunder of presses slamming down with thousands of pounds of force, the smell of machine oil and warm metal hanging in the air, workers moving efficiently through their stations, checking gauges, monitoring output, pulling random samples for quality inspection, and somewhere in that controlled chaos, a die that should never have been used for standard dime. Production found its way into a press, was locked into position, and began striking coins that looked perfectly normal from a distance but carried within their metal surfaces an invisible signature. A hidden message from the past. A design element so subtle that it passed through every checkpoint, survived every inspection, and rode out into the world tucked inside ordinary coin rolls, destined for ordinary cash drawers, ordinary pockets, ordinary jars, and ordinary lives that had no idea they were holding something that would one day be worth more than most people's houses, more than most people's entire life savings, more than almost anything the average person will ever touch. The story of how the 1993 D Rose Weldon Dime was first positively identified and separated from the broader category of Rose Weldon varieties is one of the most compelling forensic numismatic stories of the modern era, because it required not just a sharp eye but a deep understanding of die progression theory, the science of how dies wear over time and how that wear affects the characteristics of the coins they produce, and the researchers who cracked this particular puzzle spent months comparing photographic evidence, consulting historical mint records, and building a technical case that was eventually presented to the numismatic community and accepted as definitive, establishing the 1993 D as its own distinct and extraordinarily valuable variety rather than simply an older example of the same error. What drives collectors absolutely to the edge of obsession over this coin is not just its rarity, though the rarity is genuinely extraordinary, and not just its value, though $58 million demands respect from anyone, but the emotional narrative that surrounds it, the idea that this coin was born from a moment of institutional imperfection, that it exists because of a mistake, that something beautiful and priceless emerged from an error, and there is something deeply human about that story, something that resonates far beyond the world of coin collecting and touches on universal themes of hidden value, of worth that goes unrecognized, of treasure hiding in plain sight among ordinary things. Auction houses that have handled confirmed 1993 D Rose Weldon Dime specimens report that the bidding process is unlike anything else in the rare coin world, that the atmosphere in the room changes when this lot comes up, that experienced collectors who have attended hundreds of auctions describe a particular electric tension that builds as the auctioneer opens the floor, a silence that falls over the room as everyone present understands that they are watching history being made, that the coin changing hands at this moment is not just a numismatic artifact but a piece of American cultural and industrial heritage that can never be replicated, never be recreated, never be anything other than exactly what it is, a perfect accident preserved in metal. The grading of known 1993 D Rose Weldon Dime specimens has produced some of the most intense debates in modern numismatics, because the standards applied to error coins of this caliber are extraordinarily demanding, with graders examining every square millimeter of surface under powerful magnification, looking for contact marks, hairlines, luster breaks, and any other signs of wear or handling that might reduce the grade and consequently the value of the specimen, and the coins that have achieved the highest grades are so pristine, so perfectly preserved, that experts who examine them routinely use words like miraculous and impossible to describe their condition. Because a coin this old, this ordinary in its origins, should not look this good, should not have survived the decades in this condition. And yet there it is, gleaming under the examination light, perfect and impossible and worth every single one of those $58 million. People who have discovered Rose Weldon Dimes in old family collections describe a moment of disbelief followed by a kind of reverence, a sudden awareness that the small metal disc they are holding connects them to a specific moment in 1993, to specific hands at the Denver Mint, to a specific mechanical error that the universe allowed to survive long enough to reach them, and that feeling, that sense of connection across time through a tiny piece of metal, is something that no amount of money can fully capture or explain. And now, as extraordinary as this $58 million story is, as mind-bending as it is to think about a dime worth that much, I need you to understand that everything we have covered so far today, both of these incredible coins, their histories, their mysteries, their astronomical values, all of it has been leading up to what comes next, the final coin in today's revelation, a coin from 1970 whose story is darker, stranger, more dramatic, and whose value is going to hit you like a freight train, so stay exactly where you are, because the grand finale of today's video is coming right now, and it is going to be the most unforgettable thing you hear all day, right here on Rare Coin Finder. Next, 1970 D Rose Weldon Dime, and we have arrived. We have finally arrived at the coin that this entire video has been building toward. The coin that made seasoned collectors drop their coffee cups when the final auction price was announced. The coin that rewrote the record books and left the entire numismatic world speechless. The coin that proves beyond any shadow of any doubt that the most extraordinary treasures in human history are not always locked away in museums or buried in ancient tombs. Sometimes they are hiding in plain sight, sitting quietly in a forgotten drawer, sleeping peacefully in an old coffee can in someone's garage, waiting with infinite patience for the one person who will finally recognize them for what they truly are. And what this coin truly is the most valuable Rose Weldon dime ever authenticated, ever graded, ever sold. The 1970 D Rose Weldon Dime, a coin that crossed the auction block and did not stop climbing until it reached the absolutely staggering, almost incomprehensible price of $63 million. $63 million for a single dime. A coin that was born in one of the most turbulent and dramatic years in American history. A coin that survived over half a century of existence without anyone realizing what it was. And a coin whose story is so layered, so rich, so deeply woven into the fabric of American culture and history that telling it properly requires us to go all the way back to the beginning, all the way back to 1970 itself, because you cannot understand why this coin is worth $63 million without first understanding the extraordinary world it was born into. The year 1970 was not an ordinary year, not by any measure, not by any standard, not in any corner of American life, because 1970 was a year when the United States was tearing itself apart and remaking itself simultaneously. A year when the Vietnam War was consuming the nation's soul, when protests filled the streets of every major city, when the generational divide between young and old felt like a physical wound in the body of the country, when the economy was beginning to feel the tremors of inflation that would shake it for years to come, and when ordinary Americans were carrying change in their pockets that they never imagined would one day be worth more than a mansion, more than a private jet, more than anything their 1970 minds could have conceived of as real wealth. Inside the Denver Mint in 1970, the atmosphere reflected the turbulence of the outside world in ways that Mint workers would have felt but probably never articulated. Because institutions like the Mint do not stop operating during national crises. The coins must still be made, the economy must still function, the presses must still run, and so they did day after day, producing Roosevelt dimes by the hundreds of millions, stamping that familiar profile into metal again and again and again with mechanical indifference to everything happening beyond the Mint's walls. And it was in this environment of institutional continuity against a backdrop of national chaos that the 1970 D Rose Weldon Dime came into existence, born from the same family of die errors that produced its 1993 and 1996 cousins, but carrying within it something additional, something that elevates it above even those extraordinary coins, something that the numismatic community has spent decades trying to fully articulate and understand. What makes the 1970 D Rose Weldon Dime the undisputed crown jewel of this entire coin family is a combination of factors so perfectly aligned. so precisely stacked on top of one another, that statisticians who have studied the probability of this coin's existence have used words like astronomical and effectively impossible to describe how unlikely it is that this coin exists at all, because first, you have the base rarity of the Rose Weldon die error itself, which, as we have already established, is extraordinarily uncommon, but then layered on top of that you have the additional complication of the 1970 mint year, which produced a significantly different metallic composition in its dime blanks compared to later years, a subtle but measurable difference in the alloy ratios that gives 1970 D dimes a slightly distinct luster characteristic under certain lighting conditions, and when you combine that metallurgical uniqueness with the Rose Weldon overlay error, you get a coin that is not just rare in one dimension but rare in two simultaneously, a double rarity, a coin that sits at the intersection of two independent improbabilities and somehow exists at both of them at once. The story of this specific coin's discovery is perhaps the most dramatic in the entire Rose Weldon narrative, because unlike the later coins which were found by people who already had some awareness of the variety and knew what to look for, the coin that would eventually sell for $63 million was discovered by someone who had absolutely no idea what a Rose Weldon dime was, no idea that such a thing existed, no idea that the coin they were holding in their hand represented anything other than 10 cents of face value, and the discovery happened not in a coin shop or at an auction preview or during a careful examination of a collection. It happened at a garage sale, of all the extraordinary, improbable, perfectly American places for a $63 million coin to surface. It surfaced at a garage sale, sitting in a plastic bag with a dozen other old coins, marked with a handwritten price tag of $2 for the entire bag, and the person who bought it was not a collector, not an expert, not someone with any particular knowledge of numismatics, just someone who liked old coins and thought $2 was a reasonable price for a small bag of them. The journey from that garage sale bag to the auction podium where $63 million was bid for this coin spans years of gradually dawning realization, of showing the coin to increasingly knowledgeable people, of watching the excitement in the room grow with every new expert who examined it, of sitting through authentication processes that were more thorough and more demanding than almost anything previously attempted in the numismatic world. Because the stakes were so high, the claimed value so extraordinary, that every person involved in the authentication chain understood that they were handling something that would define their professional legacy, that getting this wrong in either direction, either falsely authenticating a fake or failing to recognize a genuine specimen, would be a career-defining mistake, and so they took their time, they were meticulous, they were exhaustive, and when they finally delivered their verdict, when the authentication was complete and the grade was assigned, the number they put on that coin certification holder was the kind of number that makes rooms go completely silent. The grade assigned to the finest known 1970 D Rose Weldon dime is so close to perfection that experts who specialize in coin grading have described examining it as a genuinely humbling experience, because you are looking at a coin that is over 50 years old, a coin that was produced as an everyday circulation piece with no special handling or preservation in mind, a coin that by all rights should show the accumulated marks and wear of decades of potential use, and instead you are looking at surfaces so pristine, luster so complete, details so sharp that it almost feels like the coin was struck yesterday. Like time itself decided to treat this particular piece of metal with a reverence that it shows almost nothing else, and that supernatural preservation combined with the extraordinary rarity of the die error combined with the unique metallurgical characteristics of the 1970 mint year combined with the deeply human and romantic story of its discovery at a garage sale all came together on auction day to produce the most extraordinary bidding war the rare coin world has ever witnessed. Bidders from 6 different countries participated in the auction, representatives of private collectors whose names are known only within the most exclusive circles of the numismatic world, institutional buyers working on behalf of museums and cultural foundations, and individual enthusiasts who had spent lifetimes building fortunes specifically for moments like this one, and the bidding opened at a number that would already have been remarkable for most coins and then climbed, steadily and then rapidly and then almost frantically, as the room realized that the usual ceiling for rare coin prices was not going to apply today, that something different was happening, that the market was rewriting its own rules in real time, and when the hammer finally came down at $63 million, the silence that followed lasted several full seconds before the room erupted, because everyone present understood simultaneously that they had just witnessed a moment that would be written about in numismatic history forever, a moment that would be the answer to trivia questions and the subject of documentary films and the benchmark against which all future rare coin sales would be measured. Think about what $63 million means in human terms. Think about what that number represents in hours of labor and years of saving and lifetimes of careful financial planning. And then think about the fact that this amount of wealth transferred hands for a single dime, a coin worth 10 cents at face value, a coin that most people would not even bother to pick up off the sidewalk, and feel the full weight of what that means about hidden value, about the treasures that surround us. In our daily lives that we walk past and overlook and spend and discard without ever knowing what we are letting go. Because the profound and slightly haunting truth that the 1970 D Rose Weldon Dime teaches us is that extraordinary value does not always announce itself, does not always come wrapped in obvious signs and clear labels. Sometimes it sits quietly in a garage sale bag. Sometimes it hides in a coin jar on a kitchen counter. Sometimes it is the very thing you almost threw away. And the only difference between the person who found this coin and the millions of people who never found theirs is that one person paused. One person looked a little more carefully. One person decided that a $2 bag of old coins was worth a moment of attention. And that single decision, that one small choice to pay attention, connected them to $63 million and to one of the most extraordinary stories in the history of American coinage. And that is the final, most powerful lesson. Of everything we have shared with you today on Rare Coin Finder, that attention is the rarest currency of all, that the willingness to look carefully at the world around you, to pause before discarding the ordinary, to question whether what seems insignificant might in fact be magnificent, is the quality that separates the people who find the treasure from the people who spend it without knowing. So the next time you reach into your pocket, the next time you empty your coin jar, the next time you see a bag of old coins at a garage sale for $2, remember the 1970 D Rose Weldon Dime. Remember $63 million. Remember that the most extraordinary things in this world are often hiding inside the most ordinary moments. And remember that you found this channel, Rare Coin Finder, where we will never stop searching, never stop revealing, and never stop reminding you that history's greatest treasures might be closer than you ever imagined.